We shall go ahead and get this meeting started. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. This is the Measure R Citizens Oversight and Advisory Committee. And we'll start with roll call.
All right, thank you. Committee Member Jones.
Here.
Committee Member Redwine.
Here.
Armstrong.
Here.
And we'll make a note that Weber and Hoon are absent.
Okay. So we have enough people that we have a quorum to go forward today. Okay, is there anybody for public comment? I don't see anybody for public comment, so we'll move right along to item number 3. All right, we're going to discuss items related to the Measure R transactions and use tax. We're going to review, we're going to go to Section A, which is review and discuss the revised Measure R Oversight Advisory Committee resolution. Did everybody get a chance to read the resolution as amended?
I read it.
Okay. Are there any questions? Any questions on it? Basically, from the way I read it, it's just we can make recommendations to the board now. Is basically all that's changed. We don't have the authority to actually put money towards things, but we can at least make recommendations like I've been doing the last couple of years to try and facilitate some things that can be done.
Yeah, as discussed previously, we talked about revising the resolution to put that advisory component in there. And then July this year, the board approved that change. And also what they included is basically just the process that kind of lays out how how our departments request Measure R funds, and that they're required to actually come before this committee and discuss their request through the budget process annually. So the process that's laid out in this resolution kind of follows the process of our budget each year. And so it also gives you the ability to actually provide advice to the board on what your thoughts are and recommendations for a priority, because there may not be adequate resources to address all of the needs of all the departments that come forward for Measure R requests. So, and it also gives you the ability to meet as often as you like. It changes that committee members can be reelected or reappointed. Mm-hmm. And it also gives you an opportunity to come back before the final budget if you choose, if you want to change your recommendations or your advice to the board as far as Measure R funds are concerned. You know, if a new department comes forward between the adopted budget in July or at the end of June before the final adopted budget in September, you have the ability to change your recommendations to the board in that period. So it kind of leaves that open period, that public hearing period, available to you as well for Measure R committee to make changes if you so choose.
So in other words, then for us, it would probably be good for us to make our recommendations and our findings probably at the end.
It doesn't hurt to do it in June as the resolution is written, but it does give you that opportunity between July and the final budget in September to make changes if you wish to do so.
Okay, well all right, well that's something we can discuss at a later point, so.
And as you remember, we actually met several times between June and September last year.
Yeah,
that opportunity is still available.
Yeah, because we've met what, like 6 times over the year? Yeah. Typically we meet like 6 times, just so we can keep an eye on what's going on and have a handle on what's going on through this. Okay, do we have any other questions, comments? No? Okay, we'll move on to B, review and discuss the 23-24 adopted budget.
Did you have any questions on the adopted budget for fiscal year 23-24?
I actually did.
Okay.
Let me get to my paper. I was looking at a couple of items. I guess the inter fund transfer numbers. I guess it's 70919. That's for a planning.
Yes.
That's a vacant planning position. Is that what that is?
It's actually the budget for the planning position.
I
think it's currently filled, or they have one. Oh, it is vacant. Okay.
No, I was going to say, because there's no funds that have been.
Yeah, I can speak to that real quick. So initially, Measure R was approved to cover a second planning position.
Right.
And if that position's not filled, then we don't transfer the funds.
Right.
And so that's kind of what's happened here. And we even look at it, the detail where if I'm the first planner hired and Mr. Lopez second planner, if I were to say resign, he becomes the first planner and the transfer stops. So yeah, currently the first quarter of this year, there was not a second planner employed.
Okay.
So that's why there's no
Because
transfer.
I know at the last meeting I thought we had 2 planners at that time, did we?
We do, but I checked with the department head, and as of between July 1st and 9/30, there wasn't a second planner, so.
Okay.
I apparently missed that also. I thought they were still here as well.
All right. The other one was, I guess we're going to discuss it, the capital improvement. That's 70923. We're going to be discussing that, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Here in just
that's a
couple
separate
minutes.
agenda item
Right.
for D.
Right. And then, I think there was one other one that I looked at. Oh, yeah. Administration, it's on the next page for Measure R. It's item number 157-527-70922. It's for administration 112.
Where are you looking?
That's the 3-month expenditures that ended 9/30. It's this one. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, that's actually that's C on the.
C, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so we're still on B right now with just the budget.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't know if you had any questions about how that was budgeted. And for committee member Armstrong, you're new to this. What this is basically is Measure R is accounted for separately in a different fund. It is a general tax revenue and could be included in the general fund, but for transparency purposes and accounting purposes, we keep it in a separate fund. And so these operating transfers are just all the vital services the board has approved for the Sheriff's Department, Animal Services, the jail, code enforcement. So all these departments who have been approved for Measure R funds, these transfers go from this fund to their operating budget based on expenditures like Auditor Controller Shad just explained. So I don't know if you have any questions about that.
I do. There's been a lot of good work put into this committee in the last couple of years, so thank you for that. But my question is as we move forward, are these figures always in place, or they have to come back for them every year, or?
The ones that are tied to wage adjustments for our public safety and for positions that were created are permanent. The other ones that come back on a regular basis would be requests from departments for vital services throughout the year. An example of that would be for code enforcement. They've asked for more funding this year for blight cleanup. And so those types of things will come back on an annual basis and will be brought before this committee. But the ones that are tied to actual employees and employee wages will be permanent.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we'll move on. Then I guess we'll go to, what's the next budget? We'll review the first quarter financials. I guess that's 3C. Is that 3C now, or?
Yes, that would be the balance sheet and the revenue expenditure statement provided by Auditor Controller Shad, and I'll defer to him for questions.
Okay. So I guess now I can bring up my question about the admin.
Yes.
Yes, so administration was approved for, I think initially it was a grant writer position.
Right.
And then, but as of now, it has not been filled.
Oh, okay.
I think that may have been retooled into something else, but as far as my understanding, we haven't filled that position yet. So it's kind of like the planner position where,
okay.
When in doubt, I don't transfer money. I want to make sure everything's been spent and double checked.
Right. I was mainly looking at the annual budget for that position was what I was looking at, and it hadn't been used, and I thought it was for a position.
Yes,
So
it is.
that's all I was really looking for, to be sure.
No problem. Yeah, that's a position. Almost everything you're going to see in those line items are they're going to be positions that have been approved.
Right.
And then the wage adjustments that have been approved.
Right.
That's the vast majority of it. And then, like you said, the sheriff or a department head can come forward and ask for additional funding for items.
Right, like they've been doing every year since we've had this. They come in and tell us what they have and what they would like us to try
Well,
and help
and
us.
as an update to the committee, the position that was the grant writer, we flew the position and recruited for that position 3 times, 3 different cycles, and didn't get any applications, which is typical in today's labor market. Unfortunately, we're seeing that a lot, or we're getting applicants that don't respond to emails or calls after they apply for the position. So it happens quite often these days. And so we actually asked the board to change that position, revise that position to an administrative services coordinator, which is a little bit lower level position, and we did recruit for that recently and hired somebody who started on September 29th. That they're brand new. They're in the position for about 3 weeks now. So we're hopeful and moving forward with that. And one of the focuses of that position, as you know, will be helping this office, our office administration, look at grant opportunities for vital services.
So is that, so that position will be funded from Measure R?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Correct, and like Mr. Lopez said, CEO Lopez said, they were hired on 9/29, so we hadn't spent any money last quarter.
Right.
Positions, that's
Okay,
why.
so, no, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure there was clarification on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure some people weren't sure how that worked. So, do we have any other questions?
No.
Any other comments? All right. Moving right along. We'll go to Section D, the capital improvement project that was approved by the Board of Supervisors.
Yep, I'm going to go ahead and let Assistant County Administrative Officer Randy Hooper report on that, along with our Administrative Services Manager Tony Self. They've had the lead on this project.
Okay.
Morning, Board.
Good morning.
So, as the Board is probably aware, and I think for the benefit of Mr. Armstrong's benefit, the funds that were provided by the Board for this project were approved initially last fiscal year, late in the fiscal year. I think it was April or May, or it was pretty close to the end of the last fiscal year. So one of the things that we did over the course of last fiscal year, just more generally, was we established a county program where design services from engineers, architects, folks like that was competitively procured through an RFP process that established an on-call list. So whenever that was completed, then in terms of engaging for services, for design services, for project management, things like that, the process becomes a lot quicker. So all that being said, that's just a little bit of background in terms of putting this project together. After the funds were approved by the Board using Measure R, we did use that program to identify consulting services with LACO out of Eureka. So we're currently engaged with a principal engineer from LACO for the construction design services to put together what is ultimately, hopefully, going to be a really good construction project for this community. If you've ever been to the area where this project is located, particularly in the winter, in the case of the Veterans Memorial Hall, you know that parking lot is just an absolute nightmare. It's a swimming pool, essentially. It's just pools up with water. It's horrible for the public, for veterans. They're obviously using that building. And then the second site that's part of this project is located kind of between the jail and the courthouse. So again, it's another kind of heavily used public space in terms of just parking. If you've ever been to that parking lot, it's fairly steep, it's roughly graded, it's a gravel surface. The driveways in and out of that parking lot, there's a pretty heavy lip that if you don't have, maybe a high clearance vehicle or a 4-wheel drive, you're going to probably scrape, passenger vehicles and things like that, your undercarriage. So anyway, I think from previous conversations with the commission, with CA Lopez, Auditor Shad, it's, I think, pretty well understood by this group that in terms of capital improvements, there's never going to be probably realistically an opportunity to do, a major construction project, a bridge, highway, an airport, nothing like that. Possibly leveraging Measure R if a grant were to become available. But in the meantime, showing for the benefit of the community something a little more tangible associated with Measure R beyond just the wage adjustments that were provided for the vital services. This was a project that the Board was highly supportive of. Again, if you ever visit these sites, you can see that the condition is just, it's pretty atrocious. So in terms of the project status, LACO has been engaged. We have a preliminary design essentially completed. We're hoping to have a final design done probably next week or the week after. As part of the solicitation with LACO, we did ask for construction bid services. And so in terms of putting together a bid package that'll to then go out to contractors. We'll be working with LACO on that too, based on the design. So making really good progress. Again, we carried the funds over from last fiscal year into this fiscal year, and we hope to have a project completed before this fiscal year is over, so before the end of June. And I'm available for any questions.
I had one, I just forgot it.
Sure.
That's what happens when you
You
get
know how
over
to get a hold of
60.
us.
Yeah, that's what happens when you get over 60. Now, these projects, they're basically just paving projects, correct?
Paving, improving the surface, drainage is going to be the big issue at the
Right.
Veterans Hall.
Right.
At the sheriff's office and the jail, one of the pieces that we're hoping to include, which, we're kind of just taking advantage of the opportunity to really maximize the use of these public funds, is the sheriff has long requested for basically additional storage capacity, outdoor storage. And so that's a fairly large piece of county property, more parking than we would probably ever realistically
Right.
need there. And so one of the pieces of the conversation with Lake, it was actually designing the west end of that area that's to be paved to serve as a storage area. So there'd be perimeter fencing, kind of a gate, in and out. Similar to if you look behind the jail now, there's kind of an enclosed, parking area that the
Right.
sheriff uses for boats and, side by sides.
That roadway that they have fenced off back.
Exactly. So we're looking to do something potentially kind of similar in the area of this project, depending upon what the cost would be for that.
Now, my question to you is I know that the sheriff's department's wanted to have that highway, that roadway that's fenced off that they park their vehicles on now, to get that repaved, because it's a mess back there. Now, doing these projects, can that be, ground and have a new layer of blacktop put on it during the whole process?
Well, the projects that were defined were fairly specific,
Okay.
What the area would be. I think anything further, we would need to hear from the sheriff and then take it to the board for board approval. This is the first that I'm hearing about.
Well,
this.
I'm just bringing it up because when you have all the asphalt here and having all the materials here, having them, run I don't remember how long that little piece of driveway is. But while they've got all the equipment here, what's one extra load of
That's a great idea.
gravel? I mean, of asphalt right there, because all the equipment's here.
Yep, that's a great idea.
I'm just throwing it. I'm just spitballing right now.
It's a great idea. We can talk to the sheriff. If the sheriff is interested in pursuing it, we can talk to LACO and see if it can be folded into this project.
Yeah, because like I say, once you have all the equipment, everything coming,
Sure.
it becomes a matter of just a little bit extra.
Economies of scale and take advantage of those opportunities, and it makes all the sense in the world. So we can pursue that.
I'm just, like I said, I'm just throwing that out there.
Sure.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions about this at all? So, okay, well.
Okay, thanks.
All right, well, thank you for your presentation. I appreciate that. So, okay. Now we'll move on to E, the request by the Sheriff's Department.
And I mentioned earlier, we were hoping to have the sheriff and actually his financial officer here at the meeting to answer any questions that you may have and actually do a little presentation based on the need operationally for the Sheriff's Department for these items that he's requesting. This is kind of the first stab at the process of the advisory side of things for this committee. So I wanted to make sure that it came before you. The current resolution kind of outlines it through the budget process, which is over. Of
Right.
course, at the board's discretion, it's a general revenue. If it's a vital services, they can make those decisions without the committee, but the process is we want to go through this committee.
Right.
We want you guys to weigh in on these types of things. And so I was hoping the sheriff would be able to present this to you. And like I said, last minute, we all know that we had a, kind of a serious crime here locally. And so that's derailed him and
Which is understandable.
yes, and absolutely
totally
has all of his
understandable.
focus right now. So if you have reviewed this and if you have any questions, I'm sure that Clint and I, sitting through budget meetings and having discussions with the sheriff, we can answer most of them.
Okay, well, I got a couple. The radios that they're requesting, what kind of radios are they? Are they Motorola's, are they Kenwoods, or do you know? That's a good.
John?
I can jump in. They're Motorola's through Day
Motorola's,
Wireless.
okay.
I believe the situation here is it's an upgrade for a bigger megahertz
Right.
radio, so they can have, when they go up to say Klamath Glen or outlying areas, they can still have contact with dispatch.
Okay, well, that's really hard because we don't have Red Mountain down there in Klamath anymore.
Exactly. So that's,
Okay.
this is working on
And
that problem.
Yeah, well, that's a real problem because I know through Klamath Fire, they got a fire truck from the Yurok tribe, and the radios didn't work once they
Yeah.
took down Red Mountain, and they even went so far as to get a 100-watt radio, and they still have over a third of Klamath that they can't communicate with down there, and that's with a 100-watt radio in the truck.
Yeah, I know there's been discussions about putting repeaters in trunks, and that cost is quite a bit more, and I believe
Oh,
the
yeah.
sheriff is, this is, with these new radios, should be able to, be able to call for help or call for whatever we need.
Right, yeah. I know the Glen's probably the worst because it's in a like a fishbowl
It is.
back there. At least there. I don't know so much about, Smith River or
Yeah, the Glen, obviously, it comes up in discussion, there's activity that
yeah.
requires people to go down there, and then, yeah, but I do believe when you get towards Gasky, anything off-road, we have a lot of we had wildfire, and
Yeah.
the sheriffs are involved in that, so when they get up in the backcountry mountains again, they need to be able to reach out to see what's going on.
Right, and that's very important for them. The other question I had were on the radios is I saw that the OES had a grant of $18,397 or $379. Now, how does that grant work? Because the math I ran with, if you subtract that grant, is different than what the total numbers are on this sheet. Because the radios cost $114,485.82. If you subtract that $18,379, that brings the total of the radios to $96,106.82. In my math, I don't know. I don't know how to work that math.
Yeah, I haven't ran the numbers. I mean, I haven't done the 17 multiplied by 6734.
Well, I'm just going by the numbers that are here. I'm talking about the offset,
Correct. We double check something.
the grant offset, the OAS grant offset of 18,000.
And I'm not certain whether or not Nancy included that as a direct offset or just to put that down as additional funding for radios. I know that
yeah.
initially they had a grant that had only a couple radios in it, of course, which
Right.
just doesn't meet their
that's
needs
nothing.
because there's,
Right.
Number of deputies and
Right.
sergeants and stuff that are out on the street. So this was just another mechanism to fund a couple of the grants. It was approved through one of our EMPG.
And I'm fine with that. I was just trying to figure out, I was just trying to.
Yeah, and
when
I'm
I
not
saw
sure,
that-
I'm not sure if she was showing that as an offset or just another funding mechanism for additional
Yeah,
radios.
I guess that's what my question is.
It appears they've requested the full amount of the project, and then shown this could be used as an offset. So that would be,
That would drop it down.
that would drop it down. By my numbers, that would drop it down.
Okay. I was just curious because when I ran the numbers last night, I'm like, we're off by
Yeah.
It's 20
it looks
grand.
like that.
So, okay, and then I had another question about the recording system that they're putting in. I mean, I'm all for it. But I was just kind of curious how that whole system was going to work, because they say that the district attorney's office can retrieve it from the cloud.
Yeah. So currently, the deputies and I believe the correctional officers all carry body cameras.
Right.
Through Axon, the company. So they're all tied to each other, and they share a cloud-based storage.
Okay,
And
cloud-based.
so right now, they're able to record and store electronically, and the DA should have access to pull those recordings in their cases when they're doing their own investigations without having to stop and request it from individuals. But the interview room is still on the old outdated system, not outdated, the old system, so it's not digital, you can't access it as easy. This would be bringing that into the same system they're using.
Just bringing it up.
Because
to the
it's not
21st
cheap, so it's
No.
kind of a, it phased an approach, and this seems
Sure.
to be the next phase of that approach.
No, that's fine. I just wanted some more information on it, because.
Yeah, and again, the sheriff said, obviously we know he's not here, but he could be here, he will be here at the next one to talk about it too, if needed.
So, yeah, that's fine. I knew it was going to be, it was an upgrade of some type, but I was just kind of like wondering how that was all going to pursue. The other thing I had was the vehicles. We've been looking for vehicles for the last 3 years for these guys.
Yeah, the vehicles have been very hard to find.
Yeah.
I do think that, seems they're becoming more online now, so this has been journey over the last couple of years trying to find the right vehicles, the right prices. Everything's on back order.
Oh, I know. Well,
So this is that same concept.
What did they finally decide on vehicles, do you know?
I know I don't remember the exact vehicle they decided on. Sierra Lopez, do you remember the vehicle? Was it more of those half-ton trucks, or was it a SUVs? Can't remember.
I don't think they actually decided. I think whatever they can find that's available. Honestly, we've even looked through our current contract with Enterprise, where we can lease vehicles, and so they've kind of alluded to the fact that they may be able to find some code 3 vehicles for us. And so that may be an option as well, if the sheriff can't find anything to purchase. So we're looking everywhere we can.
Sure.
And I think the majority of agencies in the state are looking everywhere they can.
Well, I think it's across the country
And-
because there's
and
no
we're typically
trips.
buying 2 or 3 vehicles, and other agencies are buying 100.
Oh, yeah.
So they're a priority.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll say that based on the usage, our average deputy sheriff vehicle lasts about 3 years is all.
Right. That's about the norm.
Yeah, but every 3
I know.
years, at about 100,000 miles, they want to get those off the road.
Yeah, because I know LAPD goes through their cars every 3 years.
Yeah.
They just
Yeah, and it's standard set by CHP. It's
Yeah.
the standard, and
Yeah.
everybody follows that.
so, okay. Do you have any questions on that? So,
I do. Question for Neil on the radios. I see that the OES already has an EMPG grant towards those, but the authorized equipment list generally puts radios quite high on the EMPG list and the other OES grants. Is there not more money in there somewhere? I know there's only so much in the pocket, so.
Yeah, unfortunately, our grants had already been allocated for the next couple of fiscal years, and the need for the sheriff is pretty immediate. He's recognizing the gaps that the current radios have in some of the locations in the community, which, safety of your officers is absolutely a priority, which is why he thought this was a good use of Measure R funds, knowing that it's something that was needed immediately, and some of the grant funds have already been allocated for the next several years, and so he didn't want to wait for the next grant cycle.
Okay, thank you.
okay. Do you have anything?
I did have a question. I don't know if this is appropriate with the search and rescue funding. Can I ask a couple questions about that? Search and rescue, they come under the sheriff's department. Is he responsible for that budget? And I know that they're volunteers.
You want to answer that?
Yeah, I can jump in. I'm assuming you're talking about the search and rescue as an entity and their own budget. That does not fall under, their budget does not fall under the sheriff necessarily. They're their own separate nonprofit organization. It's a little bit of a unique dynamic because search and rescue is a function of the sheriff's office, and there's funding set aside in their budget to help with search and rescue costs and trainings, but then there is another separate entity for search and rescue where they can fundraise. And so if you're asking about their private, I don't say private, but their budget in particular, that doesn't really fall under the sheriff. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
So who are they under? They're separate?
They are separate. They have their own taxing ID number, their own EIN number. It's my understanding that's how that's.
Do they present a budget every year for monies or not? No? You don't
No.
get involved in that?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I guess the length of our transaction with them is the sheriff does usually budget some additional funding to help offset trainings and costs of things, but they have their own separate budget and funding
Gotcha.
source.
Okay.
They are considered an operational area partner for emergency response, of course, and similar to any other outside agency, which would be like the CERT or your DART or your fire agencies. So if it's a request through the sheriff that supports search and rescue, if he knew a need for search and rescue that he could request, he could always do that through his budget. And I think in the past, we've done some things even through our grants for search and rescue to buy them some equipment. Because like I said, they're an operational area partner, and that is allowable under some of our grants.
I believe we've provided maybe some side-by-sides or some bigger equipment items through some grant funding that they wouldn't normally be able to afford. But again, it's partners in the community. We want to support one another.
Okay. The reason why I was wondering, when we had the Smith River Complex fire, I know search and rescue was very much involved in that. And one of the members started a GoFundMe for search and rescue. And I was kind of surprised by it because I thought, we've got a big old fire going on and we've got things going on. I was wondering if at some point the sheriff's department would step in, because I was just kind of surprised that there wasn't money available for them, that the citizens were donating the money. So I was just-
Administratively, that's not, we don't have anything to do with that.
Okay,
So,
well,
yeah,
and
it-
you pretty much answered my
Yeah.
question, so, yeah, okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I got one more. We're going to go back to the budget, I guess. With the sheriff's request, it's currently not in this year's budget, so it would be a placeholder if there's leftover funds?
Sorry. If you look at the fiscal 23-24 budget, I just realized I hadn't mentioned that earlier. To a lot of people, this doesn't make sense when you see the department allotment line. And basically what that is a fund balance for Measure R, funds that haven't been designated to other expenditures. So it kind of builds a fund balance. As Clint had mentioned over the last several years, when you have positions that aren't filled, you have that money budgeted, but it's not spent. And so it's rolled over to the next year, which is why we're accounting for this in a separate fund. And so if the sheriff came forward with these proposals, the committee was on board with it, the board was on board with it, then it's something that we can add to his budget based on the department allotment funds that are available.
So for clarification, the department allotment shown there is spent money?
Yes.
Understood, thank you.
Yep.
And that's why we run, well, because when the monies aren't spent, it automatically rolls over, so we actually end up with a little extra at the end of the year.
Still my learning curve, thank you.
No, that's
Yeah,
fine.
no,
No, we want
and-
you to learn.
And we had mentioned, previously, since this had started, a lot of people had talked about infrastructure, and what Assistant CAO Hooper alluded to earlier is that, a road project these days is going to be $10 million. That's unrealistic for a Measure R sales tax. When you're trying to address vital services, and your services are mainly provided by staff. And building a fund balance like this does allow us to focus on some of our public properties that are used on a regular basis to make them more safe. That's our job. If you have your recreation division, you have your veteran services, you have your sheriff's office, those types of things are public infrastructure projects we can do with Measure R funding.
Right. Oh, I forgot to mention it when we were talking about the capital improvement projects. When they finally go to do the projects, is there some mechanism that we can have some signs made up that's saying that, your Measure R funds are at work or something along those lines, so when they're doing the projects, we can have it out there so the public can see that the money is being used for other things other than just, wages?
Yes, absolutely. We plan on doing that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that. Okay, two other things from the sheriff's department is the fencing. At the animal, this is all at animal control now, for $25,000. He's going to fence the entire property, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Does he have any plan in the future of demolishing that trailer that's sitting there?
Yes. All of the old buildings that are no longer being used out there, because of their age, a lot of them have to have a survey and assessment for asbestos and lead paint and other toxic materials.
Yeah.
And if they test positive for those, then of course you have to abate them. So it's just a process.
Okay.
We're currently focused on one of our other older buildings out on Williams Drive, which was the old mental health facility and building. So we're just taking them one at a time.
One at a time?
Yeah.
Okay. I just was.
But yes, that is the plan would be to make as many improvements as possible that have been
Sure.
deferred out there at Animal Services. So
No, but I think this fencing is very, very appropriate for them because they've had a couple of break-ins when we were out there, doing our survey when we were out there.
yeah, the fencing and as the large animal area needs a lot of improvements also. So
Yes.
hopefully that'll be the next request from the sheriff.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that gets overlooked. We think about animal control, we usually gravitate towards dogs. But in reality, there's a lot of large animals.
Oh, yeah.
Horses, cows, goats, exotic animals, so there's a lot more going on than sometimes we.
Yeah,
Think
a
about
lot of people don't realize that, but they do take in, quite a few horses.
Yep. Any and all
you know.
creatures.
Yeah, so, and then the other thing is the horse trailer. I never saw a horse trailer when we were out there. Did you see one when we were out there? So that I think is a good use of the funds also, because they got to be able to transport the larger animals. And I know they were, didn't they say they were relying on docents to help them with those?
Yeah, I think they rely on community members oftentimes to move animals. I think they do have a trailer, but it's very small.
Yeah,
It's
it's-
inadequate for the animals in our area.
Yeah.
And so I think this is just one of the gaps that have been identified since the sheriff took over animal services. I think that Commissioner Riggs knew that as well. It's just money, it comes
Yeah.
down to money. And so another key use of Measure R funding, having this funding available to address those needs.
Yeah, I mean, I fully support all of these. Do you support all of this? You do too? Oh, yeah. So, all right, well, I think, we can take a vote for support of this. Seeing as how we're an advisory council now, we can vote on these things. I guess I'll make a motion to accept the Sheriff's Department request for some one-time use of Measure R funds for patrol radios for the officers, an Axion recording system for the interview room, the purchase of 3 vehicles, if they can be found, fencing to go around the entire property of animal control, and to purchase a horse trailer, I believe it's a horse trailer, to move the larger animals. Can I have a second?
Second?
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And there's no opposed, so I guess that motion will carry.
All right, and I'll also make note that absent was
Was
committee member Hoon and Weber.
Okay, so, all right. All right, well, I don't think there's anything else. Is there any questions? Do you have any questions?
I have one. We were supposed to have some training, I think, on Robert's rules that got canceled. Are they going to reschedule that? I know Gerhart did not think we had to go under those, but I didn't know if now that we're an advisory committee that it changes.
We've actually always been under those rules under the Brown Act. I think
Okay.
it's Rosenberg's that the county follows.
Okay.
And so, yes, there will be some training. In the resolution, one of those sections that was added is training for the
Okay.
committee from a budget process and Public Records Act, the Brown Act, and the Budget Act for the county. And so that will be forthcoming, and hopefully we can have all of our committee members here for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, one other thing before we adjourn is, last year we made it a point to go and visit some of our properties. We visited the Sheriff's Department. We also visited Animal Control. I think this year we should continue that by going to some other properties. Does anybody have any idea where they would like to go? I know the Sheriff's Department was a top line item for a lot of us because of the things that are going on with them, because they're.
We can agendize this for the next meeting if you'd like, and then have the entire committee talk about
Yeah, I
some
think
different
we
locations.
can agendize it, because I think we should keep moving forward with that. Because
Okay.
that way it shows, that not only helps us when we go look at some of the things that they're looking for budget-wise, like with what the sheriff came up with. We already have a good idea of the
Right.
things that he's asking.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll go ahead and
You know.
include site visits for
Yeah.
the committee on the next agenda.
And if somebody wants to volunteer, having us come out, that would be even better. Because I think that way, when we make our decisions, it's a more informed decision for us. Okay, any other questions? Anything?
No.
More than happy to do it. I guess we'll call this meeting to an adjournment, and we'll have I'd like to have another meeting. It's October. Holidays are bad. Can we shoot for a meeting in January? January work for everybody, because that's right after the holidays? Then we should have a better idea of what's going on. And then we can move forward, and then we could have the sheriff discuss anything if he wants to at that point.
Yeah, we'll plan on a next meeting in January for the committee, and if something comes up through a budget request from a department prior to that, then I'll make sure I reach out to you.
Yeah, that's fine. That'll work. Okay, so I guess we have to have a motion for an adjournment?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I second it.
All righty. All those in favor? I didn't know I became chairman.
Well, we could always select officers at the next meeting also if you'd like. All right, thank you. Appreciate your time.